Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this is the second time I've done it because actually it was a full start. So today, delighted to be joined by Mel Stanley, personal branding and career development coach, and this is part of the Analytic and Tribal Impact Social Advocacy series. So, very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Mel.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sure the listeners would love to understand a bit of your background, but also maybe a question as part of that introduction as well. Why is it important to develop your personal brand?
Well, so do the first part, my background. So I started off in advertising and marketing in agencies. So my very first job was at Which. So I've had a bit of a squiggly career in that I've gone client side, agency, and then client side. But probably most of the years were spent in ad agencies, marketing agencies. And all in the same discipline. So what was interesting was when I decided I wanted to do this, I didn't really understand the notion of personal branding. It hadn't come across, I hadn't heard of it. I mean, I think at the time it was quite American. But I knew all about commercial brands, and I knew how to promote a can of beans. So it was a combination of things really that I wanted to help women get into more leadership roles. We'll talk about that later because I'm really passionate about representation and gender diversity. And also I thought, well, that's something I can do because, surely if I know how to market and create a product, I can do the same for a person. And I wanted to do it specifically for women and join those two things together. So I kind of did 25 plus years in marketing and brand, as I say, on both sides of the fence. And the reason I think that I know from experience how important personal branding is the very last role I got in my full-time employ, which was at EDF, I got purely as a result of my personal brand. Because I decided 10 years prior that I wanted out of full-time employ. I had an idea that I wanted to do marketing consultancy of some sort, because obviously that was my area of competence. And I thought I probably needed to have a big, solid blue chip client role to be able to cement my credentials. But it's very difficult to shift into client side when you've been senior in agencies for such a long time. And I'd had two board positions, one at Proximity and one at Ogilvy. But, there's a lot of myths about clients hiring agencies and agencies hiring clients. So I repositioned myself. It wasn't inauthentic, but I started to go out on LinkedIn and talk about the more commercial side of marketing that I'd been doing, creative as well, but more commercial, what the results were, what I'd achieved. So putting a much harder quantitative angle on my CV. And I put a search out on LinkedIn for a client side role outside of London and sat and waited like a little spider for 18 months and built my profile until that lead came in through a set of connections. And it was almost done and dusted over LinkedIn, through Messenger on LinkedIn. And it wasn't really until a couple of years after that the this is a personal brand. I thought, hey, I've been doing that. And the big insight was I'd probably been doing that for quite some time and I hadn't really realized. And it made me understand that everybody has got a personal brand, whether they own it or not. Everybody has got a personal brand because, your reputation, what people talk about, what you're known for, that is so closely aligned with your personal brand. So, I know some people got personal brand, that's just for Instagram influencers. It's absolutely not. It's an essential and integral career development tool. And as I said, we've all got one. So if you're going to have one, you might as well use it to your benefit. And that's where it all started from.
You see, that's fascinating because you made a conscious decision then, didn't you? You was this is where I want to go, and you planned in advance and you shifted your brand to fit your objective and where you wanted to go. That's quite interesting. I'm almost feeling like that. Is there a step before with the people that you work with that is maybe people don't know where they want to go. Do you do that bit as well? Because it might be that they think, I know I need a personal brand. I know I want to progress in this company, but I'm not entirely sure. That's something that I know we come across quite a lot, right, Tim? Is that people don't know what they don't know. So sometimes there's a bit of soul searching that has to happen, which is to really understand who they are. So yeah, I don't know if you can tell us a little bit about that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because so I have a framework that I use, and it's absolutely that, because I was since a very early age, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I've always had a plan in place. You know, when somebody says to me, when I speak to people who've worked with me before, and I've said, you know, what's your plan? Have you got a 2-year plan? If they say no, I can't believe it. I've always planned. So my signature framework is 3 stages. It's essentially where you are now, which is, as you say, an exercise in discovery and self-awareness to uncover and dig deep on who you are, what you're interested in, what your strengths are, how you're currently perceived actually as well. So there's that element. And then there's the where do you want to go? And this isn't just about next year or the year after. It is 10 years time. So, you know, what's your passion? What's your purpose? If I said to you, if you didn't have any barriers, if you didn't have any financial concerns, if you go anywhere, do anything, what would it be? Because that's the kind of North Star. And then you ration it back and say, okay, let's add a dose of reality to this and try and work out what might be achievable. Because, you know, goals are great and they have to be stretchable, but they've also got to be achievable. And then you plan your career to get to that point. And that's exactly what I did. So move things around, move the jigsaw in order to help me get there. So every step in your career should be the platform for the next role. And if you have a brand, you can do that because your brand evolves with you. You know, all brands do, all commercial brands do. They're not static. So you can work that and leverage it and make the right connections as long as you have a plan in place. And then the final part of the 3-stage process is once you've got your brand, you know where you want to go. So what your future brand ambition is, how do you amplify it? How do you make that plan happen? And then social media and LinkedIn particularly is a huge part of that.
Yeah, no, I was thinking while you were just explaining that when you look at commercial brands, everyone is now comfortable with measuring what the brand means and where it should go. But when people look at their own individual situation, that they don't associate the word brand with themselves, do they? Is that part of the challenge to explain the why to a lot of people, or do you think it's massively changing, that people are just coming to you saying, you know, I understand that I need to work on this. How can I do it?
It's principally the latter. I've evolved my proposition quite a lot since I started nearly 3 years ago. I used to talk a lot about purpose and Simon Sinek's why and the golden circles and all the rest of it. But I found that it confused people because, and I understand that, because, you know, having a big purpose is great. And, you know, we all want world peace, but we all have the reality of what we can do and our day jobs and the confines of that. So asking somebody to work towards a big purpose is much more difficult for them to conceptualize than saying, where would you like to take your career? Or if you could do anything, what would it be? That's much easier. But part of the process is to eke out and uncover what those passions and areas of enjoyment, which may or not be causal related, you know, those things come out of the discovery process of the brand. And often, you know, I'll talk to career women who've got this idea of, oh, they want, you know, go vertically up the pole into, you know, director, senior director, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll find out that they've got a real passion and a qualification for doing something else. Like, you know, I spoke to somebody who does dog walking. She's doing a qualification in dog walking. When I said, well, how can you turn that, you know, why don't you want to do that full time? Well, I couldn't do it because it doesn't pay. And those are the kind of things you then start thinking, well, actually, if you marry this expertise with that passion, you can make something out of this, maybe not for today, maybe not tomorrow, but certainly something to go for in 10 years, if that's what really drives you. Because I honestly believe if we don't do things that we enjoy, and we have to work, most people have to work at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, agencies often more. If you don't enjoy it, don't matter how much you're going to get paid. At some point, it's going to be stressful, demoralizing, and you're going to want out.
Mm. So what would you say? I'm curious, this is not something we were going to cover, but what do you think are the components of a personal brand? You kind of touched on it a little bit. You said about amplifying it on social media. And you also touched on it's the people's perception of you. But I'm guessing it also includes, the way you are, the way you appear, the way you behave. I don't, what would you describe to people as being?
Yeah, so there's sort of foundation elements, which is a look at your values, because people's values are really important for where they work. Because if your personal values butt up against those of your employer, or you're asked to work on an account, for example, which you don't, you principally don't agree with, like gambling or, smoking or something like that. If you principally don't agree with that, that's not part of your value set, and you have to work on it, and you have to be paid to work for it. Makes it very, very difficult to thrive. So the first thing is what's your values, and what are you prepared to compromise on, and what aren't you prepared to compromise on? So I would never work on betting. Avid horse lover, hate racing, never work on a betting account if my life depended on it. So there was, so values are important. Then the other aspect is drivers. What motivates you? What makes you get out of bed in the morning? What floats your boat? What is needed in the day to make you happy when you get home and say, that was a really cracking day? Why? So there's those as well. And then there's the strengths, so real strengths. And people are very good. You see it all the time on LinkedIn profiles. I'm an innovator. I'm strategic. I'm creative. I'm this. I'm that. I'm good with people. Everybody says that. But what are your unique strengths? And those are really born out of experience and personality. And then there's obviously the skills, acquired things that you've learned whilst you're at work. You apply all of that. Those are the foundations of it, but then you add your personality on top, and personality is really the secret sauce of the combination of all of those things and what makes you, which is your personality. And you know what? That's like a thumbprint. Nobody else has got that, and that's why it's so unique, and that's why it's part of your brand. And then you take that out there and say, okay, what do I want to be known for? I want to be known as a champion for women. That's it, basically. How I do that is neither here. That's what I want to be known for. So what do you want to be known for, either in your work organization, or what's your legacy out there? What do you want to be known for? And then how do you build a platform around that? Because that's your brand. What are your behaviors like that rack up to that? What credentials do you need to support that? You have to be consistent. And the amplification is making sure that everything you put out there, every time you pick up the phone, every time you send an email, every time you post something, should be consistent with what you want to be known for. And that's how you build your brand.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, and I think you've covered so much ground there. We've actually got quite a few comments already, and so some of the comments are going to take us off different tracks, but I thought it was worth mentioning some of them. It appears as LinkedIn user for me, the first comment. So apologies for not knowing your name. It says, loving the discussion where it's heading, very useful, especially for youngsters and professionals alike. Your great perspectives. Thanks for sharing valuable insights. Christoph Hess, thanks for joining. He said, do you already see use cases for social advocacy in the metaverse? So that's what I thought would take us completely left field, but very interesting question. I think that we could probably come to that maybe at the end, because that's quite a big one. I'm not even sure how I would answer that. I would also say analyze consequence, resolve, doctrine, helps in career direction and development.
Yeah, like the process, I think that is like analyze, consequence, resolve, doctrine. How does that help? Yeah, so I think
thanks for
LinkedIn
helping
user.
out on that one.
Yeah, that's all right. That's okay.
And and I think Alicia's agreeing with that point about what would you do if money was no object. So and thanks for your comment, Adam, as well. And Jason, hello again. Thanks for joining and supporting our event. So I think this is a fascinating framework. I think what I've found a challenge is that sometimes people don't like talking about themselves, and it's how how to get them to stop thinking logically about what they want to do. Because if you think logically, you think, okay, this is where I want to get in my career. But when you do how do you get them to be in the right mindset to really like bring their passion, rather than when they're in a meeting trying to sort of logically think through where they want to go?
Well, there's two questions there. I think people struggle to talk about themselves and self-promote, women in particular, because it feels very self-serving. And for women, it can be a source of negative judgment. So I think if you don't want to approach it from a rational and logical perspective, which is I need to do A, B, C, D in order to get to there, I think how you demonstrate what you're about is the key thing. And you can do that by if you switch from selling to serving. So I talk a lot about, if you go from I want to sell myself and for people to buy me, and that's a very strong self-promotional branding sort of way, to how can I help my audience and get my name known through support and through providing information, insight, stuff that's of benefit and useful to people, because that's what makes people really memorable as well. You're never forgotten if you provide something of use to somebody. So there's two ways of doing it. And if you want to take your career in a direction that is, as I say, less building blocky, but you can start to think of, okay, what are the kind of things I need to content I need to create? What are the kind of discussions I need to have, and with who, in order to demonstrate my credentials and my passion and my purpose, without actually going out there and say, hey, this is my passion and my purpose, because they're two very different things. And I think in this day and age, action speaks way louder than words. So being able to show what you're doing, show your brand, and demonstrate through your behaviours and your actions with other people, and maybe the organisation you're with, is a probably far more authentic way of doing it than writing yourself a sales pitch.
And we often come across this, don't we, Tim, actually, on these chats about authenticity. And I think it's talked about a lot. We normally ring a bell when that word comes up. But actually, I think you've nailed it there, which is about, moving away from selling and moving towards serving. If you shift your mindset away from, ta-da, jazz hands, this is me, but actually talking about demonstrating what you're good at by listening, learning, engaging, sharing content that supports your beliefs and your values, that therefore then demonstrates you, it doesn't openly advertise you, if you like.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I mean,
unlike commercial branding, with personal branding, you don't go around with a tagline on. So the only way that you can, other than your LinkedIn headline, so the only way you can demonstrate that and get that message across is through your behaviours, and what you stand for and what you talk about. And so that third section, the amplification section, is really important. And people have there's varying levels of comfort with talking about who you are and what you do. And so some people are very shy about it, and therefore we have to find something that is that they find they're comfortable with, and it's within their comfort zone. Otherwise, they simply won't do it. Yeah. And that for some people might just be really sprucing up their LinkedIn profile and starting to post. For a lot of people, that is a massive leap. From lurking in the background and reading stuff to actually starting to be proactive, and changing their profile away from just having their job title.
I am curious. Oh, go on, Tim. No, you wanted to ask something.
No, go for it, Sarah.
No, I was just going to say, because you did touch on it there about focusing on women. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and why you've chosen to focus in that niche with working with women?
Yeah. So I guess I'm a bit of a warrior. I like to have a challenge. I like to take things on. And I've always I was brought up in an all-female household, and I've always supported the underdog succeed, and come from nowhere and succeed. And that's maybe my own upbringing, I don't know. But so the female thing came about because I absolutely passionately believe in gender equality. And I am more than happy to piss off every guy in the place and say that we represent half of the population. We should be represented on the boards at 50%, not 30, 50. Because that's equality, that's true equality. Now, the only way we're going to do that is by, I mean, sure, there's an onus on organisations to widen the gates, and I'm very clear on that. I'm not talking about lowering the bar, because you get lots of people saying, oh, well, it should be the right person for the right job. Absolutely agree. Not about quotas at all. But organisations are structurally and culturally set up in favour of men. So that is automatically going to marginalize women. So they have to widen the door in order for more women to apply for these roles. But, and this is where the female aspect comes in, women need to be confident enough to do that. And there's a whole load of learned behaviors, nature, nurture, the patriarchy, society, expectations, having kids. There's a whole load of stuff that goes in and around that, which makes it really complex and really interesting. But it means that women need, in my view, more support. And because I fully believe in that cause, that's why I decided to support women in it. And it's also an interesting niche. And what I find now is, when I coach my clients and they go from being demoralized and feeling undervalued in a toxic masculine culture, which is often the case for utilities, which is where I used to work, they really come out of themselves and go on, and usually leave and go on to do much better things. And they bigger rewards, bigger jobs that they never would have thought that they could apply for, because they never would have thought they could do. Because women are generally put in a box and a stereotype and just told to get on with it. So there's all this burgeoning number of middle management women in organisations that need to get up to that next step, and that's my target. Those are the women I want to help. The execs are already there. They've already had the coaching invested in them. They've already had the exec training. It's the middle managers, the super competence, where their ability to deliver and do sticks them to the floor. Those are the ones that need to step up, that are perfectly capable of stepping up. They just need the tools and strategies to be able to do it.
And when you talk to the middle management women, what percentage of them think about their personal brand or have thought about it already?
Not many.
Really?
It's like me. Yeah, there's a recognition of something. There's a recognition of how they are perceived within the organization, because most people have had enough feedback and continuous and feedback that says the same thing. So they know how they're perceived, and they know what they want to do, but they probably don't realize how much that perception can impact their career negatively. So I hear a lot of these women saying, but I'm really valued. I'm really valued. They don't want me to leave. Well, no, they might not want you to leave because you're really valued at making somebody else look good and doing their job for them. That's why they value you. If they value you that much, why aren't they promoting you? And that's the thing. It's getting past out of that. Well, women are very easily. We like reassurance. We like recognition, and being told we're valued can often go a long, long way. But ultimately, it's not enough. If you want to do more, then you have to get away from just being the competent doer. And that's what women do in middle management all the time. They work really, really hard, and in the hope that will be recognised and they will get promoted as a result. And they don't, because there'll be somebody coming along who does know how to self-promote, who does know how to network, who does know how to say, you know what, I can do that. That opportunity is mine.
So how would you? I completely agree with everything you said. Do you think social media now represents an opportunity to rebalance that? Because if we give you an example, the people that we've had on this LinkedIn Live series, a lot of them have made their careers through social media, and there have been men and women on this, and they've got disproportionate fame and personal brand through social media, and their roles and hierarchies were not even part of this. I mean, Rob McCargo from PwC was saying that he gets invited like next to the chairman or CEO of PwC, and there's lots of other people that are much higher up through social media. So, and there's been amazing women that we've had on this series as well. Do you feel like it's a leveler?
Yeah, I think, well, it's both a leveler, but it's also it's a huge opportunity for women. I think with there's some stat on LinkedIn. I mean, obviously LinkedIn has got a gazillion members, but I think only about 3% ever create their own content. So the content, originate their own content. So that's fairly small. Now, William Aruda, who's an American guy who does a lot about personal branding, he wrote a book called Digital You, and he did some research onto how, of that percentage, how even smaller it is for women. Who put out on social media, in professional networks like LinkedIn. Now, they're absolutely all over Instagram and Facebook and to some extent Twitter. But the problem for women with LinkedIn is the professional judgment. They fear going out there and having an opinion and saying something. Firstly, because it's, well, what have I got to say that's ever going to interest anybody? Secondly, if I put something out there, am I going to be judged negatively? Thirdly, what will my friends think if I put a post out on LinkedIn talking about what I think? Well, who are you to say that? So there's a lot of stuff that goes on that stops women doing this. But if you can break out of that, it is a leveler. Because there's certainly platforms like LinkedIn are, there's a whole female community of creators out there who have got your back. Really are. I mean, I have relied on so many over the last 2 years, and they've been wonderful. They'll promote you, they'll tag your post, they'll mention you, comment on what you do, because they've got much bigger networks and it gives you more exposure. So it is a massive opportunity, but it's just having the confidence to start doing it, because Facebook's lovely, but there's cats and delicious recipes on Facebook. It's not going to help your career unless you want to be, own a cattery.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I actually find LinkedIn is a really supportive community. And I know that, generally if you it's a bit like Twitter, right? You just get involved in the conversations that you want to be involved in, where you find value and the communities that you warm to. And and I think there's a bit of a misconception. I think a lot of people look at social and just get a bit worried about it. They get a bit scared because they just don't want to be fired down. So, I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to switch gears a little bit, more towards you and your routines and how you handle social. And it would be quite useful, I think, for folks, to understand a little bit about your routines and how you manage it. Are you only on LinkedIn? Are you on Twitter?
So no, I mean, I've got a profile, either personal or first woman on most things. I've tried them all. LinkedIn is my hunting ground. For sure. It's where my tribe sits, because apart from anything, I'm targeting, professional women. So lovely to see them in perhaps their native habitat on Facebook, etc. But it's a professional female proposition that I've got. So LinkedIn is my big area. I also have First Woman on Twitter, and I've been on and off Twitter 3 times. Because the problem I find with Twitter is, because of I get into stuff, I start ranting. I can't help it. And it's, I get involved with Boris Johnson stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, and it does your mental health no good. I'm serious. It winds you up. So I've said when I went back onto Twitter this time, under First Woman as opposed to Mel Stanley, I am not going to get into any of that. And I'm slowly going to So, but I do balance it better now with more, educational, personal brand stuff as well. But I also think, it shows your personality to be able to do that, put those kind of posts out, be a little bit more perhaps divisive, maybe a bit political. So it's fine, but I don't think there's a place for that on LinkedIn, not for me. That's not my thing on LinkedIn, but I'm happy to do it on Twitter, because frankly, me ranting on Twitter is like tiny compared to many of them out there. So it's good. Instagram, yeah, not really. No, not my thing. Facebook, I have a Facebook presence, but not under First Woman. I just post pictures of my cat. And then I started testing TikTok.
Oh,
So
now this is a first. Go on then, because
so
we've not.
I went into TikTok thinking, oh my goodness, I'm a 57-year-old woman on TikTok. What is this going to be like? But I was encouraged actually by some of my LinkedIn friends who said, we're enjoying it, give it a go. And I loved it. I still do. I'm honestly, now the video filters on TikTok are amazing. I mean, it beats everything into it, really, really good. But I started off doing, so I did 3 sort of mini videos about personal branding and all the rest, and that was good. And then I decided to start doing videos of my cat. I love my cat to pieces. She's a diva. And it was just, I had some videos and I started putting it through the TikTok filters and discovered Tom Jones's What's New Pussycat and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, wow. So Portia's become a TikTok diva. Yeah, top model. But seriously, I mean, again, I don't know. TikTok, it's just fun, isn't it? Some of my my LinkedIn friends are making TikTok work for them. I don't think it's really me, but I enjoy it, and I really do enjoy some of the videos. It's so clever what people put out there. It's so clever. But LinkedIn is me, and I guess so. My posting routine is, it's kind of disciplined and a bit random, a bit like me. So there's some. Personal, well, if I think, yeah, so I don't know whether you follow Justin Welsh, tag Justin Welsh. He's a LinkedIn Yoda, and he has some very specific disciplined structures for getting a huge audience on LinkedIn, and he certainly, by his own success, it works. And I did go on one of his courses to learn about it all, but I'm not disciplined enough. I'm really not. But I do have buckets of content. So I have educational content, which is the how to build a personal brand, how to get more confidence, how to overcome imposter syndrome, those kind of things. And I have more personal content, but again, I don't like talking about very personal stuff. I think you can show your personality without having to get down into, life-changing things. Other people do it. That's absolutely fine. I don't judge. I'm not in the that should be on Facebook camp at all, but it's not my thing. But for sure, personal stories or stories that talk about an experience and have an edge of personality in them, those will get the most views. No question, they will get the most views. So a bit like a marketing funnel, if you want to get a rapid increase in views and to be seen, then put something that's very personal out there, and even the more personal the better, to be honest, if you can do it. My how-to, if it's very useful how-to, and I've, again, over 3 years, I've learned what really chimes and what doesn't. That can create some very, very good engagement, and that's, for me, a better measure, engagement, because that's people who are actually commenting and DMing and saying, oh, I found it, I thought this, can you help me with that? And that's really interesting. And then there's the other stuff that I post, which I call contextualized posting, which is when I start banging on about misogyny, men stalking women on LinkedIn. I did a post a couple of weeks ago, which just put a photograph up of the Munich Security Council, which is 45 male, pale and stale men who are deciding on the future of the world. So that went ballistic. So there's those kind of things. But again, they're not necessarily, as a business person, they're not necessarily going to invite people to buy your services, but it certainly gives a sense of who you are, what you're about, what your passions and purposes are. I try and post every day, somewhere between 9 and 10, 7 days a week. I
Okay.
know broadly what works on the algorithm. You can't beat the LinkedIn algorithm, but you can make it work for you a little bit. There's some standard rules for that. But every day, and then I mix it up. So I do image and text. I do text only. I do some video. I do share some articles if they're really interesting, but always with a perspective rather than just a straightforward share. And it works. For me, it works. My measure of it works is enough people are interested in what I've got to say to want to have a conversation. I get almost all of my leads off LinkedIn, almost all. And not always from people I know, but somebody who knows me, who knows somebody else. So I think as long as you mix it up, there's a lot of test and learn in it, though. It's like all marketing. I mean, it's just a big marketing tool at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think when you said that you're not too disciplined or you're disciplined, but then you also sort of go off track a bit, you obviously do have quite a good strategy and focused strategy in what works for you. And so, it's really great to hear your routine and to see that you're getting leads from it and that the good word of mouth that you're generating. So that's amazing. I wanted to go to something you said before, but also to expand upon your sort of social media advice, I think. When you're talking about taglines and personal brands, we've talked over the past few years about whether it's good to have a hashtag, a personal brand hashtag. So, for example, Brian Fanzo has pressed the damn button because he wants people to be able to pick up the mic and to speak, and that he's tried to, and I think successfully in the B2B marketing world, coined that for himself. Do you think, and because you said earlier that taglines of commercial companies, which I would have agreed with, but actually people like him and Daniel Guzman and other people are really trying to develop their own personal brand hashtags. And I just thought this was interesting. And I just wonder what your perspective is on that, whether people can condense that into like 3 or 4 words, because it's a very hard thing to do. I mean, I don't have one.
Yeah, I've got one. Success without compromise.
Nice.
That's mine. And I put it on where appropriate. I put it on the bottom of my how-to posts because that's what First Woman is all about. Women being successful without having to compromise who they are. And so that's been there since the beginning. And it's interesting you say that, though, because I thought whether I could do it as a tagline under First Woman, Success Without Compromise, and all the rest of it. But I decided not to because it might need too much explanation. Maxim of advertising, if it needs explaining, don't do it. So, but I do use it on LinkedIn quite a lot, and I think it helps with search as well. But the second thing, probably for me, most important thing it does on LinkedIn is if people want to see all of your content and it's a unique hashtag, then they can follow that hashtag and they will always see your content. That's a little bit been replaced on LinkedIn by the bell thing. You've seen that where if you click on somebody's bell, you see their posts every day. But I think that would be my tagline. And I know some people have John Asperi on LinkedIn, relentlessly helpful is his, and they do work very, very well if you take the time to explain and expand, and they get in people's minds. So that's probably the closest. What I meant was, though, you wouldn't, I wouldn't introduce myself as Mel Stanley, founder of First Woman, Success Without Compromise. It doesn't feel particularly natural. It's just a very, very, for me, it's a very good summation of the outcome of my position.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference then, isn't it? You can create a hashtag around you, the person, or you, the mission, which is what you've gone with, which is a way of categorizing your content in a way people can find it quite easily, and know the purpose behind it. So no, that's a good question, that one, Tim.
But because you've got a personal hashtag, haven't you, Sarah? That
I do, and I don't. I tested it for a little while. I haven't used it. Have I got one that I've missed then, Tim? What am I doing?
No, I thought you had a follow Sarah or the Sarah.
Social Sarah. Yeah, I
social
was
power.
testing.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry that I didn't actually know exactly what it was.
I'm testing it now, but I haven't used it for a while because I was testing it. I'm testing the impact of it, to be honest with you. So I haven't used it on the last few posts, but yeah. So I'm just trying to see where that's at. So I did have another question actually, which is about creating your own content, because I know you do text posts, image posts, you share article posts, so you're mixing it up, you're mixing the topics, you're mixing the type of posts when you share them. What about long form content? What about articles?
Oh, I love articles. They get the best engagement. They get the lowest views partly because LinkedIn doesn't necessarily promote them so well. But so I subscribe to Shield, the API that looks at all your content on LinkedIn, and you can rank it as regards views or engagement. And if I look last year and this year, all my articles got the highest level of engagement. So when I launched my newsletter last week, No One Puts Baby in a Corner, that had 51% engagement, which is massive.
Yeah.
In terms of, so that's people who read it, not just clicked on it, that read it, and I think that's right. So I'm also, I love writing. I did English language for at A level. It's about my only really successful A level. And I did think about journalism or something like that. And actually, I started off in PR because that was kind of a more, probably less aggressive form of journalism. So I'm kind of a closet, perhaps pretty shit, but enjoy it anyway, writer. So writing articles, I really enjoy doing it. It's also something that if you're writing for yourself, like my blogs on my site, you don't have to be worried too much about what other people think, and you can just write what what happens to be going on in your head at any given time. So I take a lot of inspiration from other people's posts and from books and articles, and I sort of I wrote one on New Year's Eve which did really well, which was music and misogyny on New Year's Eve, which was a bit of a rant about 1970s films like Grease. You'll have to read it to know what I was on about. But it was essentially about, it's amazing how things that were accepted back then would no longer be accepted, and how girls of my age, then I was 14, 15 when Grease came out, didn't even notice the sexism and the misogyny and the microaggression in it at all. And it's actually teeming as a film. It's teeming with it. So it's all of this kind of stuff. And that just occurs to me and I write it. And I really enjoy doing that. So long form for me is kind of where I'm at. I find it easier than writing sound bites. Again, Justin Welsh was said that there is a formula for doing those sound bites where you do all in lines. It's 10 lines, and it's a really good number of points and a call to action, and wonderful. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just naturally verbose. I find it quite difficult to do that.
No, I love that. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Oh, there we go. Phil's written, interesting point on articles, Mel, from an engagement point of view. Question: is there something you're doing to get to this level? A lot of people have given up articles up because of the challenge of getting the views, even knowing they are measured differently. Personally, I like them for the long tail, but long tail keywords if anyone's watching. But even then, I don't do as many as I used to for myself or clients. Phil, I think I'm the same a little bit. I love writing as well, and I think when you kind of love the topic, you mentioned it, Mel. When you're into it so much, you can just throw out a blog very quickly because your whole heart is in it, right? You don't have to think too much. And but it's interesting there about a lot of people giving up articles because they're not getting the views on them. So
yeah, that's been going on for quite some time. And it answers the question, am I doing, what is it something I'm doing to get? I don't think so. I mean, I'd like to think it's simply because they're entertaining. Not that I'm suggesting yours aren't, Phil, but I don't know. They're very,
Phil's very entertaining. I've met him. He's very entertaining. So I have your back on this one.
So I just write as I speak. That's the thing, and I kind of have to be sort of kind of mindful there might be a little bit of offense in there, but it's when you talk about the things that I do, you are going to irritate a certain proportion of the male population, not everybody, but some. But I find the article, if I was going to, I have no logic to this, and have no evidence to suggest this is the case. But from the conversations I've had with my clients and with people who follow me, my female connections, because it's a little bit irreverent, it's a little bit light-hearted, and it's a bit piss-takey, but also serious. It raises a serious point. I think they enjoy reading them because it's not all very learned and and earnest. It's fun, it's entertaining, as well as mostly having a good point behind it. That's the only thing I could say. But as I say, I've got absolutely no evidence. Maybe I should do a survey on why people read them. But
I think there's two trains of thoughts, isn't there? Because there's what gets the most engagement and views from a marketing standpoint. It's like, well, why would I do it? But if people's passions are to write longer form content, you can actually achieve both, I think, because you can start with the article. You can be a bit more free form rather than, oh, I've got to cut down the characters in a tweet, or this LinkedIn post doesn't have enough call to actions. And then once you post the article, you can then repurpose tweets or LinkedIn posts from that article once the content is out, because it's much easier to do, because you can say, oh, actually, I really like that soundbite, so I might do a quick video on that point. So I actually, it's really interesting talking to different people. Some people hate writing articles and some people love writing them. And I would say encourage the articles, and then if you really like the content, then push it out in different forms which get the engagement. So you get the best of both worlds.
Yep.
Completely agree. And I think, with articles, once you've if you've got a website, you can publish them on there as blogs, and that all helps for Google as well, because Google, I think I'm right in saying, with articles and certainly with newsletters on LinkedIn, Google, what's the word? You know better than me. Tags them for searching. So it helps your SEO as well. So try and keep the two ones on my site and the LinkedIn articles together. If I publish one on the site, it'll then go on LinkedIn and vice versa. So again, there's some consistency. But the newsletter is the one I'm most excited about at the moment, because that's deliberately a bit bonkers. So.
Yeah, I'm going to subscribe to that. I did see that you'd launched that, and I was curious. No one puts baby in the corner.
Absolutely.
Thought, yeah, that's
Who
quite
knew that Dirty Dancing was a film about female empowerment?
Yeah, there you go. I've subscribed. There you go, Mel. All done. So you got another one now. So I've just seen the time. Look at the time, Tim.
I know. I wanted to ask one more question, and that was, what is the biggest challenge? And I wanted to ask specifically about women, because I know that's your passion area. What is the biggest challenge for women in developing their personal brand?
I think it's the biggest challenge that all people have, actually, but particularly for women, because it involves strengths. So it's defining your value proposition. So what is it that you uniquely bring to the table? You mentioned it earlier, the same number of characters virtually as a tweet. How do you boil down what it is that you do, who you do it for, what the benefit for that audience is of you doing it? Because it's even for marketers who could apply that to a product, probably, any planner writing a creative brief would know how to do that, standing in the corner blindfold. When you have to apply it to yourself, it's another thing entirely, because first of all, it requires you to really dig down and look at what your unique capabilities, positioning, and what you stand for is. And naturally, women don't like talking about what they're good at. Google launched I Am Remarkable in order to be able to help women overcome that, just to be able to say, I am remarkable because. That's a whole initiative that Google did to try and encourage women to be able to own their achievements and own their strengths. And if you're going to put a value proposition together, you have to be able to do that, because it's not enough to say that you do it, you have to be able to deliver it. So it has to be built on your strength. So what is it that you do that's unique for what audience, and what's the benefit, and why would a company hire you, keep you, promote you, whatever it might be. Boiling that down into a couple of sentences is probably the hardest thing, but it's what everything is then built off. It's a platform for your reputation, it's the platform for your decisions, it's the platform for your behaviors, everything. So it's the key, just exactly the same as a product and a creative brief. It's the key part to do, but incredibly difficult to do, to write.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. That's fascinating. And would you say that one tip, which I think I heard from you at the beginning of this, is to get other people to tell you what they think your strengths are, so that
Yeah.
it takes away from you having to say how wonderful you are, and also gives some good feedback, so that you can feel the confidence from the people around you.
Absolutely, because it gives you permission to say that if it's already been validated by somebody else. So yeah, it's feedback, getting proper feedback, not just you're doing a good job, is really important. But again, I challenge women to sit there in front of their boss and say, tell me what you really think my strengths are. It's the kind of question that you don't want to hear. And actually, probably most bosses would struggle because they'd want to say something polite. But it's the absolute fundamental, is working out your value proposition based on your uniqueness. It's a USP. It's your USP, and it really takes some time to reflect and work on. I tinkered with mine for about 18 months until I landed on it. And then I thought, yeah, I'm pretty much gonna stick with that. And then when you've got it, that's your LinkedIn headline. You don't need it to put job title, so VP for this, working for so and so, which is just boring. You can really articulate who you are and what you're about then through your value proposition on LinkedIn, and it's a way more interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I asked Sarah for some advice on my profile many years back, and Sarah gave me a bit of feedback, and I was like, actually, the most interesting thing was what you said you thought my strengths were, and what I should put in there. And I was like, because I didn't know, because you just come out with buzzwords, don't you? And actually, it's more helpful if other people recognize them.
Yeah, you're so close
on
to
that.
it though, aren't you? You're too close to it. You're too close.
So I found it. I mean, I found Sarah, extremely helpful and I've updated it since, because of that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, even the marketers, maybe because they're marketers that I coach, you think they'd be able to do that, but it's always a head in hands. Why can't I do this for myself? And it is, as you say, Sarah, it's because you're so close to it because you're talking about you, that sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. But the point about marketing buzzwords is what is well made. And when I go through my coaching and I say, right, what are your strengths? And people generally trot out the usual suspects. The key then is to say, okay, fine, but what does that really mean? So if somebody says I'm a good listener, what does that mean? Well, it means that you're patient, empathetic, that you give your time for other people, that you respect their time as well and give them the opportunity to speak. That's all good listening. But it's so easy to just write it off as, oh, it's a good listener. Strategic or problem solving. If you dig down into those things, there's so much more in there. Even being punctual, never being late takes planning, consideration, boundaries. And when you start thinking of it like that, you get a much richer and more interesting view of somebody's strengths. And often in those nuggets are the things that you can really pull out that is the differentiating point for them.
Amazing.
What a brilliant way to finish. You've actually inspired me, Mel, because we've got our team meeting next week, and I think I might split them all up and get them to explore their unique value proposition for themselves.
Or ask all of them what your strengths are.
Yeah, well, I will. Yeah, I'll pair myself up. And I think that kind of feedback's one of our values, right, as a company. So, we've got to get used to it, haven't we? So, yeah, brilliant.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mel. Oh, so for anybody listening or watching, where can they find you, Mel? You mentioned a few places, but, mainly on LinkedIn.
So if you want to search me on LinkedIn, it's Mel Stanley. I'm there every day in between 9 and 10. I also have a company page on LinkedIn, First Woman. I have a website, firstwoman.rocks. And yeah, and I'm also under First Woman on Twitter if you want to follow me for political rants and a little bit of personal branding.
Yeah, super. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for joining us. I didn't know you were there. Yeah, brilliant. And anybody wants to see any more of these, we both Analytica and Tribal Impact, we have on our resources pages. This will be recorded on there, and you can find all the previous recordings and this one there as well. So thank you so much, Mel, and thanks for everyone. All the amazing comments and questions, and thank you for it makes it even better when we get audience participation as well. So thank you so much, Mel. Thanks for your time.
No, pleasure.
Mel.
Thanks for
Enjoyed it.
inviting me. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Bye.